Is this the face of pure evil? Now I know what you're thinking. This is prison school, right? And prison school it's a comedy, you know. It's a lot of satire, a lot of toilet humor. And who would take this show or manga, because we're going to be talking about the manga, mostly the ending. Who would take this seriously? You'd have to be crazy, right? I guess I'm crazy, because I'm diving real deep into answering this question. But before anything, this is your spoiler warning. I will be discussing the ending of the manga Prison School. Now, if you've watched the anime, that is not the ending of the series, because it was only the first arc and there's a lot more to the story. But if you want to know more about that, you'd have to go and read the manga, and that is what we are discussing, the manga, the actual ending to the series. So this is your spoiler warning. If you don't want to be spoiled, now's the time to see yourself out and maybe come back and we can have the discussion later. But for now, this is for people who have read the manga and have finished the series. Alright, let's get into it. Now, looking at this panel, just looking at this face, I mean, of course, you know, the events that transpired, you're going to be thinking, yeah, she destroyed everything, right? She ruined Chiyo's relationship with Kiyoshi. Our main protagonist basically just ended up not getting the girl in the end, and we know he went through so much to get to that point, you know, and Kiyoshi and his journey, you know, and of course, how crazy a journey it was. I mean, every crazy thing he had to do, exposing himself over and over again, embarrassing himself to the point of death, literally at one point. I mean, how do you not look at this and think, why would Hana do this to him? Like, why is she doing this? She must be evil, right? And the first thing that comes to mind is she had to be jealous, right? She had to be jealous. She was being petty, right? She saw that she wasn't gonna end up getting with Kiyoshi, and she just wanted her revenge, or she wanted to get back at him, or she wanted to get back at Chiyo, because, you know, she didn't want him to end up being the one to get him, right? But then at the same time, what in the series has pointed us towards her being that type of character? I mean, there was a situation one time that comes up, and this was just her acting, where she acted jealous of Mary and Kiyoshi because, you know, we had Kate show her a video of them together doing something, of course, you know, sucking out the poison from the snakes and just looking just like they're committing a sexual act, which we all know is not the case. That's not what happened. And Mary told her ahead of time, but see, that's where I like to start with this, because Mary told her ahead of time. See, that's something I've noticed that was a theme in this show, is that the female cast, right? And one of the reasons why I'm taking this a lot more serious than most people would, you know, and actually giving it some thought, because the ending did leave me thinking for a while. It changed my perspective on the entire series. And looking at Mary and all the female cast in this series, they were always honest and upfront with each other. They always had the right motivations, right? They were trying to save their student council, their underground student council. They wanted to stay with their friends. They were helping out their friends, right? And you can look at the guys, you can look at Joe, you can look at Andre, you can look at you can look at all of them and think, okay, well, what's the difference? And that's where the key word comes in, and that's motivation. Because the motivations of the guys were never the most honest motivations, right? I mean, at one point, their sole motivation was to see a wet t-shirt contest. And sure, like, looking at this as a comedy, sure, it's humorous. They're meant to be that way. But when you look at how the characters grew throughout the series, right? When you look at how they grew, it seems like the ones that really never changed were the male cast. And I'm here to put some facts down, guys. Let's look at the bros, right? The bros that were constantly betraying each other, that would, you know, forget about each other at times, even though, you know, once in a while one of them would notice something is wrong and they would help each other out, but for the most part, they were self-centered. And looking at everything that happened, in the end, is it a coincidence that not one of them got the girl? I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, Andre got the girl. Actually no, because if you think about that, it was a reverse situation where the girl was chasing after him. So it's more like she got the guy, right? And besides him, let's examine everyone else. Gabuto, right? Gabuto could have easily got the girl, and what happened? He let his popularity get to his head, right? It didn't seem so at first, and it's not like I'm saying that he let the popularity get to his head to where he ignored the girl he liked, but he basically got this attention from the resident slut senpai, to which I would also like to point out that even she, in the end, was a lot more respectable than you would assume, because she walked away after Who said he couldn't decide which girl to be with, implying like he wants to have both of them. He clearly had eyes for the girl who shared his passion for history. And I have to say, so that's why I say about these female casts is that all of them in a way are more respectable than the guys, because even the way that Slut Senpai came after Gabuto was very kind of wholesome. Like, she really actually liked him. She tried to learn about his interests. She tried to actually, you know, appeal to him. And yes, she used her body, because that's who she is, but she tried to do more than that, and that's more than what you would have expected out of a character like that. And that's supposed to be a shallow character named Slut Senpai, and still, you got depth out of her, even if it's just a small amount. And in the end, he ended up being that kind of scumbag that's just like, I don't know, you know, even though in his head it should be clear who he wants to be with. He had eyes for one girl, but he was so easily swayed, you know? And it's easy to relate as a guy, especially in that time period, being a teenager, hormones and everything. It's easy to relate, but we're looking at it as a whole picture, right? And let's move on to Shingo, because Shingo was always kind of like so self-centered. He kind of just didn't care about Anzu's feelings half the time. He kind of ignored Anzu most of the time. To be honest, their relationship was kind of frustrating to me to just watch, because, you know, Anzu wasn't perfect, but she was a hell of a lot nicer, and she was a hell of a lot more caring. She seemed to at least have interests in the relationship, while Shingo kind of didn't give a shit. And maybe you didn't see it that way, but that's just how it came across to me, right? And then moving on to Joe, I mean, Joe in a way was just kind of a hopeless case. Joe was kind of a case where he was never really that close to getting with any of the girls. He had the interest in Cake Senpai, or Cake-san. Yeah, they called her Cake-san. He had interest, but of course it turned out she had a boyfriend, but then we don't know what happened with that. But moving on, the whole point is, you know, who really did get with the girl in the end, besides the reverse situation with Andre, right? And let's move back to Hana, right? Because that's where this whole thing centers. It's between Hana and Kiyoshi. Because at the end of the day, they had a bond, right? They had a bond, and you can look at it as if Kiyoshi was the oblivious, playing that typical oblivious character, but he wasn't. Like, he knew about this bond. He came to know about this bond, and he started ignoring it, right? Because he wanted to get the nice girl, right? Even though, if we really examine the relationships in this series, Hana and Kiyoshi were meant to be together, right? And I'm not saying that they're meant to be together in the sense of like, they're meant to be together like they have the biggest love. No, they fit together perfectly, right? Because as the characters developed, right? Now Kiyoshi, we always knew he had a perverted side, like all that stuff. But when it came down to Hana, Hana just became more and more perverted as the series went on, right? And she basically accepted that. I feel like she accepted that to a point where she knows that her bond with Kiyoshi is based on a lot of just pervertedness and a lot of like sexual tension between the two. And Kiyoshi might have not noticed, or he might have not felt that way in the beginning, but he came to develop those feelings, but he ignored them. And nothing is more proof than that than the entire chapter where they go basically on a date. But instead, Kiyoshi's being kind of like, he's being self-centered like a lot of the guys in the series, which I'm saying, like, that's a lot of where I look at this and be like, the guys were not the victims in this series. They might have been the victim in the beginning, but as the story developed, they were not the victims anymore, right? So he goes on a date and he's charging her money for all this stuff. And, as we're looking at this as like, oh, he's doing it because he's doing it for Chiyo, right? Because he wants to give Chiyo a great birthday, a great, they had plans with the whole group, right? And I'm just feeling worse and worse for Hana. And I'm not sure if anyone else felt that way, but I was really feeling bad for Hana, because it's like at this point, I know that Hana has accepted that they have this bond, that their relationship is not a clean relationship, but she's fine with it. I mean, what more proof do you need to that than when she literally kisses Kiyoshi when he's covered in piss, right? And there's a lot of things hinting towards this, because during that date, she tells Kiyoshi that she did it because she kind of said that he's not dirty to her. And in a way, that's her, even though it makes it seem like she's not sure of herself. I really do feel like that's instinctually what she was actually feeling, right? But she's still at that stage, she doesn't want to accept those feelings, so she's kind of questioning herself. But I feel like it's just kind of pouring out of her, just like we see where she just, out of nowhere, says, we should go out. And at this point, there is no denying. There is no denying Kiyoshi is not aware of her feelings and is ignoring her feelings. But to make it worse, this is where I come back to the guy characters in this series were really kind of just scumbags in a way, because he literally kind of laughs it off, casually saying like, if things don't work out with me and Chiyo, then this and that. And it's always hidden beneath this whole layer of, oh, he's just joking around. And then they try to, and then Hana kind of tries to affirm that whole thing where he says to Hana, well, you don't really want to go out with me. And she's like, of course not. But at this point, come on. Does Kiyoshi really not know that she's just that type of person? She's that type of character, right? We know the type of character. So for him to just kind of like casually laugh it off and just like, I felt bad for Hana, right? And it hadn't even hit me, to be honest. At that point, it hadn't even hit me just how bad things were with Hana until the very end. And now you might be thinking, like, getting back to this picture, right? We look at her face and we're thinking to ourselves, wow, she looks so freaking satisfied. She looks like she exacted her revenge, right? But let's really analyze the situation, right? Was she jealous? If she was jealous, there were so many situations where she could have ruined Chiyo's relationship with Kiyoshi very early on. Like, if she really wanted to do that, she could have done that before Chiyo even realized she had feelings for Kiyoshi. She could have told her, she could have done things to hint at it. She could have done a lot of things if she was that type of person. So, was she jealous? No, I honestly believe that she came there to do exactly what she said. She wanted to tell Chiyo the truth. She wanted her to know everything that happened before Kiyoshi confessed, because to this point, what indication was there that Kiyoshi was going to come clean with her? Looking back at the entire relationship between Chiyo and Kiyoshi, he has never come clean with her, right? A lot of these situations we can understand, but their whole relationship, just like he says himself, was based on a lie. He lied about being interested in sumo, and of course, at that point I wasn't thinking anything of it, because like I said, as a guy, we can all relate to these things. But me as a critic, right, I'm looking at this and I'm breaking it down and I'm seeing the development in characters, and I was already seeing that Hana was becoming more caring, that Hana was becoming softer, because they tried to depict her as that violent character, and it's easy to believe, it's easy to look at it and think she's that violent character that's kind of crazy from the start of the show, right? Of course she would do that out of jealousy or petty, but we already got the jealousy out of the way. What about pettiness, right? Was she being petty because, she had lost, right? She had lost to Chiyo, which is funny kind of thinking about it, because at no point did they show her as looking at Chiyo as a competitor. If anything, she was just kind of like trying to passively dissuade her from going for Kiyoshi. She wasn't being aggressive. Yes, she ripped up the note, but that was nothing, right? And he got the wrong idea. At first I was like, is that our first sign of her being petty? And no, it ended up not being the case. And that's never been the case, right? If anything, we got to see them kind of become more friendly towards the end of the series, where it would make it harder for her to like reveal this if she was, if anything, it kind of just came to that point where I've been saying, where all the female cast, they do things out of friendship. She felt like she was becoming friends with Chiyo, and now she decided she has to come clean, and she hadn't told anybody about this because it embarrassed her, but she was doing this for Chiyo. And looking at Kiyoshi, do you really think that he was planning on telling her any of that? Ever? Do you feel like he was going to come clean? I don't feel that way. And nothing pointed towards that. Just like nothing pointed towards Hana being this jealous, petty person. And here's the thing. The key point I want to make, that she's not even petty, is that once everything was said and done, she told him everything. What happened? Was she bitter? Was she petty? She was disappointed, and but she rose above it and she smiled, and she was basically thinking to herself, you know what? I told him everything. He was honest. We came clean, and I'm fine with that. I should go congratulate them. Does that seem like that type of character to you? That petty, jealous character? Does that seem like that character to you? I don't think so. And then something occurred. This feeling rose up in her, right? And you could even say that maybe it's proof of their bond, right? This feeling rose up that something is wrong, that he hadn't come clean with her, that something doesn't feel right. And as we all know, her instinct was correct. So do I look at this face and think this is the face of pure evil? No, it's quite the opposite. I look at her and I think this is the face of a hero unveiling the true villain. And villain may be a strong word because this none of the characters are black and white. There's a lot of shades to all these characters. So villain is not, I say that metaphorically, but in the end, she was trying to save Chiyo from just, getting hurt. It's as simple as that. So when we look back on that day through Chiyo's eyes, a day that her sister left her without saying anything, a day that she went to gather with everyone, but they went off and did something else and she was left alone by herself for who knows how long. A day she was expecting a confession from the guy she loves and ended up just covered in piss and broken on this day, the day she was expecting a surprise birthday party that had been built up for a while, that she had been building up this excitement. That's just really sad. I was really sad. I really felt for Chiyo. I really felt for Chiyo. And if I look at anyone in this series and think to myself, that's a victim, it was definitely Chiyo. When we get that scene where we see Mary on the plane and she still feels that men are garbage. When I first saw that scene, I'm not gonna lie, I was just like, I felt a certain type of way. But then when everything came together at the end and you see how Chiyo ended up, I almost felt like I got a glimpse of Mary's past, because it almost feels like we got something that kind of represents what could drive someone to feel that way. And I kind of don't blame her. But that's it for this. This has been a long video. It was hard getting my thoughts together for this one. That's probably why it's so long. I just kind of tried to, do it all at once, and hopefully it came out good. I hope you guys got a different perspective from this, and if you disagree or agree with some of my points, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Because I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I forgot to mention. There's a lot of points I forgot to make. But let's wrap this up. Yeah, this has been Honest the Critic. As always, saying if you're gonna be a critic, be honest. Make sure to like and subscribe, because this was not the easiest video to make. At least, I had to make a lot of pointers to get my whole, my whole argument across. But yeah, catch you next time.